cracked screen lights up in my hand. That is the first thing. The light. It comes on without warning. A cold blue-white rectangle in a room that has been dark except for the monitors and the single fluorescent strip above the nurse's station that has been humming its particular hum for the last 4 hours. I have stopped hearing it. I hear it now because something else has started. A sound. Not music. Not an alarm. The hospital has 17 different alarms, and I know all of them by reflex, by the specific shape each one makes in my body before my brain has finished processing. This is not any of them. The Files app is open. My thumb caught something on the screen when I was scrolling for an owner ID on this unclaimed device someone left behind 6 weeks ago, and that the nursing supervisor asked me 40 minutes ago to please log before end of shift. It is 37 minutes past 2 in the morning. I have been at this hospital for 19 consecutive hours. The fluorescent hum, the cold light, and now this sound coming out of the cracked Samsung that the tag on the bag says has been sitting in the lost and found since a Thursday in November, 6 years ago. A voice. Male. Middle-aged. A register I know before I know it. I do not move. The break room is empty behind me. The corridor is empty in both directions. My name is Nora Voss. I am 36 years old, second year internal medicine at Halverson General, and I am standing at the nurse's station at 2:37 in the morning holding a stranger's broken phone while a voice comes out of it that is not a stranger's voice at all. The voice is saying something about a candidate, and then blood type. The recording quality dips for a moment, static pulling the words apart, and then comes back. Candidate. Blood type. And then a word I catch only the shape of before the static takes it. Then the voice again, clearer, and a second voice underneath it, lower, harder to make out. I press the phone closer to my ear. My elbow knocks the clipboard off the edge of the station counter. It hits the linoleum. I do not look at it. The first voice says a number, not a price. A number, the way a doctor says a number. A value, a range, a specification. And then, matches. The back of my neck goes tight, a single point of heat at the base of the skull. The way it goes when a clinical picture starts to assemble itself and you realize what you are looking at is not what you thought. I've spent the last 3 years studying aplastic anemia, bone marrow failure, donor matching, compatibility profiles. I spent those 3 years in a research fellowship 2 states away, surrounded by files like the one this voice is describing. A candidate, a type, a match. I chose that fellowship because something in me needed to understand that particular disease at a level most internal medicine residents do not bother to go to. I never knew why. Match, the voice says again. I know this voice. I have known it my entire life. I heard it at every dinner table, every report card, every hospital visit where I sat in a waiting room chair with my feet not touching the floor. I heard it the day I was accepted to medical school, and it said, measured and calm, that it was not surprising. I heard it at my white coat ceremony and my graduation, and every phone call since. I press stop. The fluorescent hum returns. It has been there the whole time. I set the phone down on the counter. My hands are steady. I have trained them to be steady in circumstances where steadiness is the only useful thing. The cracked screen has gone dark. I pick the phone up again. I press play. I listen to the whole thing. The recording is 4 minutes and 12 seconds. I know because I watch the counter at the bottom of the screen while my father's voice explains in the careful, unhurried way he explains everything, that the candidate is a match on the relevant markers, that the age is within the acceptable range, that the contact at the clinic has confirmed the family situation, makes acquisition low risk. The second voice, lower, harder to place, asks about price. My father gives a number without hesitation. Acquisition, he says. I set the phone face down on the counter. Inside my right coat pocket is a folded piece of paper I've been carrying for 11 days. The eviction notice for the house my parents sold while I was working a double shift. The house I have been renting from the family estate at below market rate for 7 years, sold to a development company without my signature on any paperwork. Pauline sent me a text the next morning. We tried to reach you, but you have been so busy, sweetheart. I read it standing in this same corridor, and I thought about what it would mean to believe her. I have spent 36 years finding reasons to believe her. I picked the phone up and I put it in my coat pocket. I finished the intake form. I note the device as a cracked Samsung with a partially charged battery and no visible owner identification, received November and logged tonight. I write my badge number at the bottom. I hang the clipboard back on its hook. Then I sit down on the floor of the break room with my back against the cabinet under the sink, my knees pulled up, the phone in my pocket and the eviction notice in my other pocket. My father's voice keeps playing in my head even though the recording has stopped. The particular quality of calm in it. The way it has never had any give. No warmth, only measurement. I have always believed that was the way he was made. Contained, precise. I believe that explained everything about him that I could not explain any other way. I understand now that it does not explain it, it describes it. There is a difference. I take out my own phone and I create a new document and I type at the top, things I know for certain. Then I begin to list them. Without speculation, without conclusion, only what is confirmed and what I observe directly. Blood type, I write, the wrong side scar. No newborn photos, the phone, and now the voice. My father's voice on a phone that has been sitting in this hospital's lost and found for 6 years describes the acquisition of a child. 5 items. I read them back once. Then I save the document. I am not going to turn the phone in. I know this. The way I know a diagnosis when the numbers stop arguing and line up in one direction, and there is only one interpretation that accounts for all of it. I am not the mistake here. I walk back to the nurse's station. I have 3 charts left to complete. I pick up my pen. The handwriting is precise. It is always precise. The phone stays in my pocket. The sun comes up at 6:43. I know this because I am still at the nurse's station when it happens. I have not slept. I finished the 3 charts. I started 2 more that were not technically mine, because saying yes to the next task is the only reliable way I know to keep moving when staying still feels dangerous. My badge gets me out of the building at 7:12. I drive to the storage unit 12 minutes from the hospital. I have had it for 7 years, since the end of my fellowship. The boxes in the back left corner are from my childhood bedroom, labeled in my own handwriting, books, keepsakes, photos. I pull out the one labeled photos. The photographs are in a shoebox. Some of them Pauline packed when I moved out for college. Photographs I do not have clear memories of choosing to keep. Just there, the way things that have always been in your peripheral vision are just there, present without being examined. I go through them slowly, school photos going back to kindergarten, birthday photos in the backyard of the Caldwell Street house, Christmas photos and vacation photos, and a handful of Polaroids from when Pauline went through a phase of using instant film. And then there are no photos. I mean this precisely. I go through the box in roughly chronological order, and I reach a point where the photographs simply begin. Not where they begin being of me as a small child, but where they begin being of me at all. There is a photograph of me at what I estimate is 18 months old, sitting on the floor of a living room I do not recognize, wearing a yellow dress and a small silver bracelet on my left wrist. And before that photograph there is nothing. No newborn photos, no hospital photos with a pink hat and a swaddled blanket, no first days home. I have noticed this before. I noticed it when I was 10 and went through this box looking for a photo of myself as a baby for a school project. Pauline said we had lost the early photos in a move. Water damage. She said it with the particular fluency she has when she is saying something she has said before, something rehearsed until it sounds like memory. I filed it away. I was 10. I am 36. I do not file it away this time. I look at the photograph of myself in the yellow dress. I am sitting on a floor I do not recognize wearing a bracelet. I have a clear sensory memory of the weight of it on my small wrist, the way it made a small sound against things when I moved my arm. I remember asking Pauline about it when I was 6 or 7, and she said I had outgrown it and she had put it somewhere safe. I put the photograph in my coat pocket. There are no other photos from before the yellow dress one. I close the box and I drive to the hospital, not to work. I am not scheduled until Thursday. I drive to the hospital because I have a patient I need to check on. Eleanor Hatch in room 412, admitted 4 days ago with a cardiac event that has since stabilized. I tell myself this is why I am going. Eleanor Hatch is 74 years old. Her chart notes are clean. She is on the standard protocol. She is doing well enough to be discharged in the next day or two. I knock once and open the door. Eleanor is sitting up in bed with a paperback novel face down on her lap. She looks at me the way patients look at doctors who come in, the practiced blankness of someone who has learned that expressions of anxiety make medical staff ask more questions, and then she stops looking at me that way. She looks at me the way someone looks at a person they recognize, not the way patients recognize their doctors. The way people recognize someone they were not expecting to see. Her hands, resting on the paperback, tighten on the cover. She says my name, not Nora. She says a name I have never heard anyone say to me. Clara, she says. Just that. The way you say a word you have been holding in your mouth for a very long time and have finally been given permission to put down. She says, you have her mother's eyes. Eleanor sets her paper back on the bedside table. She looks at me with the expression of a person measuring how much weight a moment can hold. Then she begins to cry. Not the way people cry when they are in pain or frightened. The way very old people cry when they have been waiting for something for a very long time, and the waiting has finally ended, quietly without drama. Just the tears coming as though they have been behind the surface all along, and a door has been opened. She says her granddaughter's name was Clara Hatch. Clara was 14 months old when she was taken. She reported it to the local police, the county sheriff, a state agency. In the first 2 years, there were searches and a case number and a detective who called every few months. After the 5th year, the detective retired and the case was reassigned, and the new detective told her the trail had gone cold. She hired a private investigator after that, then another, then a third. The trail always died in the same place. A hospital transfer record showing Clara moved to a facility 3 states away for a cardiac evaluation that never appeared in any subsequent records. A record Eleanor's third investigator told her carefully looked like it had been altered. She says she has a photograph. I say I know. She looks at me. I take the photograph out of my coat pocket. The yellow dress, the living room floor, the silver bracelet on the left wrist. I hold it out to her and she takes it and she looks at it for a long time without speaking. And when she looks up, her face has the quality of a person who has just seen something confirmed that they have believed for 35 years without being able to prove it. She says, that is my living room. She says, I took that photograph. The room keeps going around me. The monitors keep their rhythm. Down the corridor, someone is having a conversation about discharge paperwork. The ordinary sounds of a hospital floor at mid-morning continue without any awareness that something inside this room has just shifted in a way that will not shift back. Eleanor asks me if I know what my blood type is. I tell her. She closes her eyes for a moment. Then she asks if I would be willing to take a DNA test. She says she has waited 35 years and she can wait 2 more weeks, but she wanted me to know she needed me to know. Because she is 74 years old and her heart has been giving her trouble and she did not want to leave this hospital without having said it. I say yes before she finishes the question. She says she will contact the laboratory she has worked with before. Then she asks if I have a folder. I say, you mentioned a private investigator. Reports. I ask if she has the documentation with her. She says she has carried a folder everywhere for the last 15 years. She reaches to the small bag on the chair against the wall and takes out a folder that has been folded and unfolded so many times that the crease lines are soft, almost white. I open it. There are missing child reports with a date that puts me at 14 months old. Photocopied case files with a detective's name and a case number. Letters from the 3 private investigators, each one progressively shorter, the language getting more careful as the trail got colder. There is a photograph of Clara Hatch as a newborn, in a hospital blanket, with a name card in the clear plastic bassinet. And there is a photograph of Clara at perhaps 3 months old, being held by a woman who is 40 years younger in this photograph than she is in the bed across from me, but who is unmistakably Eleanor. Clara is wearing the silver bracelet, even at 3 months old. I have a memory of the weight of it on my wrist. I look at the scar on my lower left side, which I cannot see through my clothes, but which I know the exact location and length of. I have known for 12 years, since my first anatomy course, that my scar is on the wrong side for an appendectomy. I told myself it was a variation. I told myself surgeons make asymmetrical incisions. I believed this because the alternative required me to ask a question I was not ready to ask. I think about 3 years in a hematology fellowship. I think about aplastic anemia. I think about bone marrow compatibility and donor protocols, and a voice on a cracked Samsung that said candidate, that said match, that said acquisition in the tone of a man describing a procurement rather than a child. I think about what the scar might actually be from. I stand up. I tell Eleanor the DNA test is the right next step, and I will follow her lead on the laboratory and the process. I tell her this in my patient voice, and then I stop because Eleanor is looking at me with an expression that is not the expression of a patient receiving information from a doctor. She says, "I just wanted to find her. That is all I ever wanted. I just wanted to know she was standing up somewhere." I nod. I do not trust my patient voice for this particular sentence. I walk out of room 412 and I go to the stairwell and I sit down on the concrete step between the third and fourth floors with my back against the wall. I take out my phone. I open things I know for certain. I add items until I have 11. Then I stop because I need to think about what comes next with the same discipline I use to think about a complex case. Stop adding information. Start looking at what I already have. I have enough. What I do not have yet is the name of the right attorney. I think about the notary stamp on the eviction deed, the property lawyer's offhand comment, the word he used, off. I write it down. I write the word Anna underneath it, the name a law school friend mentioned 3 weeks ago, in a context I did not fully register, something about inheritance disputes. Something about a case that had seemed unwinnable until it did not. I underline it. Then I sit with the concrete wall against my back and I think about a man who speaks about children the way he speaks about transactions. And I think about the specific quality of calm that has characterized my entire life with him. The precision, the containment, the way he has always been more interested in managing situations than in understanding them. I think about what it means that he called that calm a virtue. I think about what it actually is. I stand up. I smooth my coat. I walk downstairs and out through the side entrance and I drive, and I do not cry because I have a rule about that. But my hands on the steering wheel are not the hands of someone who has just had an ordinary morning. I sit in the parking structure with the engine off, not because I am in distress, because I am thinking and the car is quiet and I need the thinking to finish before I start driving. I have $312 in my checking account, a debit card and a credit card, both attached to a bank account that Raymond set up for me when I was 18 and which I have maintained because the fees are low and I have never had reason to question it. I think about it now. I think about whether Raymond can see the account. I think about whether he has ever looked at what I spend money on and whether the records pull at the hospital has generated any notification that would reach him. I open my banking app. I look at who is listed as a secondary account holder, Raymond Voss. His name is on my bank account. I am 36 years old and my father's name is on my bank account. And I have not thought about this in 15 years because I have never had a reason to think about it. I drive to the credit union 3 blocks from the hospital, and I open a new account with $200 in cash from the emergency fund I keep in an envelope in the lining of my bag. Because I read an article once about financial independence, and the one practical thing I took from it was to keep cash somewhere that no one else knows about. The account takes 22 minutes to open. I leave the credit union with a new debit card, a new account number, and the particular feeling of a person who has just quietly moved something important out of reach. My father bought me. He bought me because I was a match for a dying child. He bought me the way you procure a resource. He structured a transaction, and he paid a price, and he took a baby from a living room on a Sunday morning, and he brought her to a city 3 states away, and he filed paperwork, and he gave her a name, and he built a life around her that had the shape of love and the substance of utility. and then the child he bought me to save died anyway from insufficient yield. And he kept me anyway because I was already integrated into the legal structure of his estate because there were papers with my name on them. Because having a daughter with a legitimate claim to his inheritance turned out to have a different kind of value than the value he had originally planned for. I was useful. That is the word. I have been turning it over since the night in the break room, and it keeps coming back to that. Useful. Not loved or not loved in the way that love is supposed to work, but useful, which is why the love was always conditional on my performance, why every achievement was received with the contained approval of a man confirming that his investment was producing the expected return, why every deviation from his expectations was treated not as something a father negotiates with a daughter, but as a variable that needed to be corrected back to its prior state. I was never his child. I was his acquisition. The name Anna Reyes comes from a text chain I have to scroll back 3 weeks to find. It is from Stephanie, a law school friend, now a family law paralegal. The text says, "If you ever need someone who does not back down from complicated estates, call Anna Reyes. But what I need first is the records. I know the hospital system the way you know any system you have worked inside for 2 years. I know which requests trigger automatic flags and which ones move through quietly. I go to the records department at 11:15 on Wednesday morning. Marcus Adler has worked in records at Halverson General for 9 years. He has a collection of miniature succulents on his desk that he talks about with genuine feeling. I tell him I am working on a credentialing audit and need to locate a pediatric surgical record from out of network. I give him the facility name, the approximate date, and my own name as the patient. He looks at the information. When he looks up, his expression has shifted slightly, the way a compass needle shifts when you bring a second magnet close. He says the record exists. He says it has been amended multiple times over a period of several years. He says he is not able to share the contents of an amended record without written authorization from the patient or a legal representative. He says in the careful hypothetical register of someone threading a needle that a portal request would generate a complete file including the full amendment history, and that the amendment history would show every change made to the original document and the credentialing information of the person who made each change. He says hypothetically. He is looking at his succulents when he says it. I say, I understand. I submit the patient portal request from my phone before I reach the elevator. I find Dr. Osei's office on the 4th floor. Dr. Patricia Osei is my supervising attending. 51 years old, 14 years at this hospital, a reputation for precision that I have always found clarifying and occasionally exhausting. Under normal circumstances, she is the person I would go to with a complex case. These are not normal circumstances. She looks up from her desk and gestures at the chair. She closes the file she was reading. She says my name. And then she says that she has received a complaint from the board regarding my performance review, triggered by an anonymous report. She is placing me on an enhanced oversight protocol, effective immediately, an additional documentation review of my last 60 cases, and a mandatory evaluation appointment. I am watching her face while she says this. Her phrasing is not the phrasing she uses when she is delivering institutional information she agrees with. This is the cadence she uses when she is constructing each sentence with the awareness that it may be examined later. She says, I will need to document everything about this situation carefully. She says it the way you say something that has 2 audiences. She says the evaluation appointment will be scheduled for next week, and that in the meantime I should continue to maintain my documentation at the standard she expects. She says she expects that standard to be very high. Then she picks up the file again. I stand with my hand on the door frame and I turn back to look at her, and she is already reading, or appearing to read, and her face gives me nothing at all. I walk out. I stand in the corridor outside her office and I think about what she said. I need to document everything about the situation carefully. The emphasis she placed on document. The word carefully. I file it. Not away, the way I have filed things my whole life, in the same document where I am keeping the other things. I take the stairs to the lobby and I walk out through the main entrance. There is a text from Brooke. My sister is 27 and she has built an entire life that is visible to everyone at all times. The text says, "Saw you were at the hospital today. Are you okay?" And below that, 3 seconds later, Dad said, "You have been having a hard time lately. I am here if you need to talk." The text has the syntax of concern and the subtext of surveillance. I open the Instagram app. Brooke posted a video last night, a tour of the house on Meridian Drive where my parents have lived for 12 years. 4 minutes and 18 seconds, 140,000 views. She pans through the living room, the kitchen out to the terrace, narrating in the voice she uses for brand content, warm and slightly breathless, and this is where we do family dinners, and I just love this corner in the mornings. I pause the video. The armchair in the corner by the fireplace. The side table with the lamp that has a cream shade with a pattern of small leaves. I slept in a house with those objects for the first 18 years of my life. Above the fireplace, a landscape painting with a specific quality of blue in the sky that I have always associated with the idea of home. The video was posted yesterday at 7:48. Yesterday at 7:48, I was eating a granola bar on the floor of a hospital break room, trying to understand what I had just heard on a 6-year-old phone. I screenshot the timestamp. I screenshot 3 frames showing the furniture, the painting, the terrace. I walk to a parking garage, drive to the office of real estate attorney Gerald Marsh, and wait 20 minutes on a chair that is the right height for most adults. Gerald Marsh listens to me for 4 minutes. He asks 3 questions. He pulls up the deed and reads it for 2 minutes without speaking. Then he says the sale appears clean on its face. He says if I sign the paperwork, the sale is valid. I say I did not sign it. He says they all say that, in the neutral delivery of someone relaying a statistical observation. Then he looks back at the deed and says, almost to himself, that the notary stamp on my signature looks off and he would recommend a second opinion from someone who specializes in document authentication. He does not offer to provide that second opinion. I thank him for his time and ask if he knows an attorney who specializes in complex estates. He gives me 2 names. I write them both down. I add them to the list below the word Anna. I drive home, which is the on-call room on the 3rd floor of Halverson General, where I have been sleeping for 11 days because the house on Caldwell Street was sold while I was working, and I have not had the time or the money or the particular kind of energy it takes to find a new apartment when everything else is also happening simultaneously. I find Stephanie's text thread and copy Anna Reyes's number. I dial it. She answers on the 2nd ring. Her voice is direct, not unfriendly, but not warm in the way that warm is a performance. She says her name and she waits. I say I was referred by Stephanie. I say I have a situation that involves property fraud, possible identity fraud, and medical records that appear to have been altered. I say there is also an audio recording that may be relevant to all 3. There is a brief silence. Anna Reyes says, "If half of what you are describing is accurate, this is not a civil matter. This is federal." And something in my chest, which has been holding a specific kind of tension for 11 days and 1 very long night, shifts into a different configuration. Not relief. The feeling when a diagnosis comes together and the picture stops being ambiguous and becomes specific. The problem does not get smaller. It gets clearer. I ask her when she can meet. She says tomorrow. She says 8 in the morning, her office. She says to bring everything I have. I say I will be there. The performance review meeting is scheduled for 8 Thursday morning, and I know before I walk in that the outcome has already been decided. The anonymous complaint filed the same week I started asking questions. The board notification arriving within 48 hours of my visit to Marcus and records. Things that could be coincidence, arranged in a sequence that is not coincident at all. Dr. Petrov reads from my file. The anonymous complaint characterizes my behavior as erratic and concerning, references my housing instability, uses the phrase emotional dysregulation. He reads it in the tone of a man reading a document he did not write but has agreed to present. I sit with my hands on my notebook, which is closed. I do not say anything while Dr. Petrov reads. A reaction is part of what this meeting is designed to generate. It would become part of the record, would support the phrase emotional dysregulation. So I let him finish. He says my residency is being suspended for 30 days pending a mandatory mental health evaluation, a supportive measure. The program values my contributions. Standard procedure. I wait until he finishes. Then I ask who filed the anonymous complaint. He says the complaint is anonymous. I ask whether the board has any information about the relationship between the complainant and any party with a financial interest in my current legal situation. There is a pause. The HR liaison writes something. I ask for a copy of the complaint. He says he will need to check on the process for that. I sign the acknowledgement form, reading every clause, 4 minutes, all three of them watching me, and I stand and I push the chair back to its position at the table. I say thank you for your time. I carry my lab coat to the bag in the on-call room. Then I go to room 412. Eleanor is dressed. Sitting in the chair by the window in her street clothes, the clothes of someone who has prepared herself. She has the folder on her lap. She reads my face when I come in. She asks if everything is all right. I say it will be. She nods as though this is the answer she expected. Her discharge has been delayed because of an insurance issue. She is not worried about it. She has the quality, when she talks about waiting, of someone to whom waiting has become a skill rather than a hardship. I sit in the second chair and tell her I submitted a patient portal request for my surgical records. I tell her I have spoken with an attorney who has agreed to take my case. Eleanor listens with the stillness of a person who has been carrying a case file for 35 years and knows what it feels like when things start to move. She says she would like to proceed with the DNA test. I say I would like that too. She takes a piece of paper from the folder, a laboratory name, an address, the name of her contact. She says the contact is expecting her call and she will set it in motion today. A cheek swab. 10 days. She says she has done this before, twice, in the early years when she thought she had found a lead, both times negative. She says this without self-pity as a fact. I ask her about the bracelet. She says Clara was wearing it in the hospital when she was born. Her own mother gave it to her, engraved with the family name. She says the name, Clara. I squeeze her hand once briefly and she lets me. And then I go back out into the corridor and I take the stairs down because the stairs are empty and the elevator is not, and I need a few minutes of empty. The insurance issue has resolved before I reach the lobby. Eleanor's discharge is processing. I sit with her while the final paperwork is completed. We ride down in the elevator together. She tells me that her granddaughter, the one she actually raised, has been in the city for 3 days and is downstairs waiting. She did not want to introduce us yet. I say I appreciate that. The elevator opens onto the lobby. I carry her folder to the door and hold it, and she steps through into the October air. A woman is waiting on the path outside, younger than me, dark coat. And she looks up when Eleanor comes through the door, and her face does the thing that faces do when you have been waiting with a specific kind of worry, and the worry can finally put itself down. Eleanor takes the folder from me at the door. She does not look back. I stand in the lobby and watch her walk to the woman on the path. I watch the woman take her arm. I watch them walk toward the parking area together. Tomorrow I am meeting Anna Reyes at 8 in the morning. Tonight I am going to sleep. Anna Reyes is shorter than I expected from her phone voice, which carries a quality of height, and she moves the way people move when they have decided that deliberate movement is more efficient than hurried movement. She says, "Let me see what you have." I take everything out of my bag. The Samsung, in its original lost and found bag, tagged with the date I logged it. The eviction notice. The deed with the notary stamp that Gerald Marsh described as off. The folder from Eleanor with the missing child reports and the investigator letters and the photographs. The printouts I made of Brooke's social media posts, each one time-stamped. The photograph of myself in the yellow dress. My own medical record printout with the blood type highlighted. My notebook from the past 11 days. I put all of it on the desk between us and I sit back. Anna reads everything methodically. 3 minutes on the deed. Another note. She opens Eleanor's folder and reads slowly, going through each document in the sequence Eleanor organized them. At one point, reading one of the investigator letters, her jaw shifts slightly to one side and then back. She listens to 45 seconds of the Samsung recording. Then she puts the speaker down. She says, "The notary fraud is our immediate lever. A forged notary stamp on a property deed gives us grounds for a civil filing that can trigger a court order to freeze any further asset transfers from the estate while the matter is investigated. She can file within 72 hours. She says the identity question requires two things: DNA confirmation from the laboratory Eleanor is arranging, and a legal name search that her investigator will run against the missing child database using Eleanor's case number. The audio recording needs forensic voice authentication from a firm she uses and trusts. She asks if I have a known sample of Raymond's voice. I say I have voicemails, a lease renewal reminder, a birthday message, a tax document request. She says that is sufficient. She picks up the printouts of Brooke's social media posts. She says timestamped public posts documenting the acquisition and enjoyment of assets can constitute evidence of knowledge in a financial disclosure proceeding. Her investigator will cross-reference the post dates against the estate transaction records. She puts the printouts down. She says, "Your job right now is to keep your head down and be impossible to dismiss." She means it the way a clinician means a treatment protocol, not a comfort, a directive. Impossible to dismiss means continuing to function at the level your program expects, documenting everything in the institutional context, not confronting anyone directly, and not doing anything that could be characterized as retaliatory or erratic. The suspension is a problem, but it is also, potentially, documentation of interference if the connection to Raymond's financial interests can be established. She asks where I am sleeping. I tell her. She writes something on her legal pad and says she has a contact at a housing assistance organization that works with medical residents in housing instability situations. She says it is not charity, it is a program specifically designed for this circumstance, and she prefers to remove exploitable variables. She says, "Look into it today." She says one more thing before she stands to indicate the meeting is ending. She says that acting before the right moment, in cases like this one, does not set the case back. It ends it. I walk out. I stand in the elevator going down with the folder in my bag and the Samsung in my pocket and Anna Reyes' voice still in my head saying the right moment. I think I have been waiting for the right moment my entire life, in the particular way that people who have been managed, wait, trained to defer and reconsider and find the reasonable explanation. This is not that kind of waiting. This waiting has a structure and a purpose and a 72-hour filing deadline. And that is a kind of waiting I know how to do. I go to see Eleanor. She has been in the same hotel since her discharge, 4 blocks from the hospital. She told me during our conversations in the hospital because her third private investigator sent her a flag 18 months ago, suggesting the trail might lead here to this hospital, to a staff member whose profile matched certain parameters. She did not tell me what parameters. I did not ask. Some information arrives in the right order, or it does not arrive at all. Her room is on the 2nd floor. She opens the door before I knock the 2nd time, which means she was waiting near it. She has the folder. She has a cardigan on over her clothes. She has made tea in the small electric kettle on the desk, and she pours a cup for me without asking whether I want one, which I appreciate. I sit in the desk chair. She sits on the edge of the bed. The folder is open on her lap. I tell her the relevant parts. The civil filing within 72 hours. The DNA test confirmed as the right next step. The forensic authentication of the audio recording. She photographs the laboratory card and sends it to Anna's office before I put my phone back down. Eleanor watches me do this. She has the quality of a person who has waited so long for something to move that when it starts moving, she does not want to look away. She shows me a section near the back of the folder she has added since the hospital. Pages in her own handwriting, notes from 35 years of searching. Every lead, every dead end, every phone call, an investigator report, an agency form. Her third investigator told her it was the most comprehensive documentation of a cold case search he had ever seen from a private individual. The handwriting clear and consistent across 35 years, slightly smaller in the later entries. The pen pressure lighter, but the clarity never wavering. The last entry is dated 11 days ago. Arrived. Halverson General. Will find her. That is the complete entry. She closes the folder and she hands me a copy of the full documentation she had made at the hotel business center. I put it in my bag. She says that her granddaughter, Clara's cousin by blood, has been staying in the hotel with her. Her name is Rose, and she is 31, and she was born 4 years after Clara was taken and has grown up with the absence as a fact of family life, a shape at the table that was always empty. She says Rose wants to meet me when I am ready. I say I am not quite ready yet. She says she knows. She pours more tea into my cup without asking. We sit for a moment in the quiet of the hotel room, which is the quiet of a space that two people are occupying with some history between them, even though they have known each other for less than 2 weeks. And I think about what it means to have a grandmother who kept a 35-year record on a hotel nightstand and arrived in a strange city at 74 with a folder and a business card and the simple certainty that she would find her. My phone rings. I look at the screen. Raymond. I look at the number for the length of 2 full rings. Eleanor watches my face. I press the side button to silence it. It rings again. I press silence. A text arrives. Call me when you have a moment. Your mother and I are concerned. I call Anna. She answers in 1 ring. Do not respond, she says. If he calls again, let it go to voicemail. Upload immediately. Do not initiate any contact with Raymond or Pauline until I tell you to. I understand. 20 minutes later, while I am still at the hotel, the phone rings a 3rd time. This time it goes to voicemail. Raymond's voice. The same voice that has been on the Samsung for 6 years and in my memory for 36. He says he has heard I have been asking questions at the hospital. He is concerned. The last several weeks have clearly been very difficult, and then his voice does something it very rarely does, which is to slow down slightly, the way a person slows down when choosing each word with extra care. He says there are people who remember him as a child who struggled, that revisiting old things tends to hurt the person doing the revisiting more than anyone else, that he hopes I will call him back so they can talk. He says, "We love you, Nora." He says it the way he says everything. Measured, calibrated, certain of its own authority. He hangs up. I take the phone away from my ear. I hold it in my lap and I look at the documentation spread across the bed, the missing child reports, the investigator letters, the photographs. Eleanor's 35 years in a folder she carried to this city in a cardigan pocket. He knows I am asking questions, and he is scared enough to call 3 times and leave a voicemail, which is not something Raymond does. He is recalibrating. He is sending the message that I am a difficult child who struggles, that revisiting old things causes harm, that love is present and available if I will simply stop doing what I am doing. He thinks this will work. He has 36 years of evidence that it works. I upload the voicemail to Anna's portal. Then I send her a message through the portal. Voicemail received. Uploaded. He knows I am asking questions. A response comes in 6 minutes. Good. Do not respond to him. Keep logging. We're on schedule. I open a different section of the file at our next meeting. Anna's investigator has cross-referenced the asset transfers from the Voss estate against the time-stamped record of Brooks' social media posts. A table, 2 columns. On the left, asset transfers, dates, amounts, property descriptions. On the right, corresponding posts, dates, content. Every transfer has a corresponding post. The villa renovation corresponds to a transfer from the estate account on a specific date. The vehicle, photographed across 2 months of posts, corresponds to a transfer 2 weeks before the first photograph. The furniture, the terrace, the kitchen, the garden, all of it documented publicly with timestamps, all of it corresponding to a transfer bearing a signature that is not Raymond's and is not Pauline's. It is Brooks. Brooks signed acknowledgement documents confirming receipt and acceptance of transferred assets. Documents that contain, in boilerplate language on the 2nd page, a disclosure statement describing the source of the assets as the Voss family estate. She signed documents that told her where the assets came from. Anna says, and there is this. She takes out a single printed page. A screenshot of a direct message sent from Brooks' social media account to the personal account of Gerald Whitmore. Gerald Whitmore is the board member who filed the anonymous complaint against my residency. The message is dated 2 days after my visit to Marcus in records. It says, She has been asking questions at the hospital. Dad thinks she may be looking at the old records. He asked me to let you know because of your position there. Let him know if anything comes up. Anna says, the court will not need to prove that Brooke knew everything. It will need to prove that Brooke knew enough, took action based on that knowledge, and received material benefit from the scheme. The direct message establishes that she coordinated with a board member at her father's instruction in response to your investigation. She marks the tab in the file, Brooke, accomplice, knowing. I think about the video, the villa tour. 140,000 views. This is where we do family dinners. The text she sent me, are you okay? Dad said you have been having a hard time. She knew I was looking. She told Whitmore I was looking. She used the language her father gave her, the language of concern for a struggling child, and she aimed it at the right person at the right time to make my professional life harder while her father worked on the legal front. Anna closes the file. She says the civil property filing went through yesterday and the asset freeze order was granted this morning. Raymond cannot move anything from the estate while the matter is under judicial review. She is preparing the federal referral. The combination of the audio recording the surgical record, the missing child documentation, and the DNA result when it arrives will constitute grounds for federal kidnapping charges. Charges related to unauthorized medical procedures on a minor, and charges related to inheritance fraud. Her contact at the federal level is waiting for the DNA. She says, 3 more days. I drive back to the hospital. I park on level 2. I sit in the car for a moment. Then I take out my notebook and I write down the date and time of Raymond's calls and the text. I write it the way Anna asked me to write things. Factual, time-stamped, no interpretation. Then I close the notebook and I go inside. I take the elevator to the 2nd floor. I go to the records department. I go through the double doors with my badge, which still works, and Marcus is at his workstation with the succulents on the back edge of his desk. He looks up. He does not say anything. I say that I submitted the patient portal request 4 days ago, and I want him to know, informally, that it is part of a legal proceeding that his office may receive a formal request about in the coming weeks. I say I want him to have that context before any such request arrives so that it is not a surprise. He is quiet for a moment. He says he understands. Then he says, in the measured tone he used last time, phrased again as a hypothetical, that if an amendment history on a flagged record were to generate through the patient portal in the normal course of processing, that amendment history would include the credentialing information of every person who made a change to the original document, and that credentialing information includes employer and licensing body, which is a matter of professional record. He says hypothetically. He is looking at the smallest succulent when he says it, the one with a new small growth at its base. I say thank you. He says, take care of yourself, Dr. Voss. I go back out through the double doors. In the electric kettle that the 4th-year residents contributed to collectively and that everyone uses without acknowledgement. I sit at the table and I drink the tea and I look out the window at the parking structure across the street and I think about the next 10 to 14 days, the civil filing in 72 hours, the forensic authentication of the audio recording, the DNA test, the patient portal results, the investigator cross-referencing the estate transactions against Brooke's post timeline. Each of these things is moving. Each of them takes the time it takes. The work is done. What remains is the waiting, and the discipline of the waiting, and the discipline of the not acting while the waiting happens. I go back to the on-call room. I stand and I stretch my back, which has the particular complaint of a back that has been sleeping on a narrow institutional bed for 12 nights. I straighten my coat. I check my pockets. Samsung. Phone. Eviction notice. Photograph. I've been walking around for 11 days carrying everything that matters in my coat pockets. I think about what it will mean to have a drawer again. A key. A lease with my own name on it and no one else's. An address. I have been a guest in my own life for so long that I have started to mistake it for a permanent condition. The measured approvals and the conditional warmth and the house on Caldwell Street that I paid rent on for 7 years to a family that owned me in a category I did not have a word for. The fellowship I chose because something in me was drawn to the disease that my body was purchased to treat without my knowledge. The handwriting so precise my attendings use it as a benchmark, which is what happens when you spend 36 years proving you are worth the space you occupy. I turn off the light in the on-call room. I walk out into the corridor. The fluorescent hum of this floor is the one I know best now. 3 in the morning, 11 days, I know the frequency of it, the way I know my own breathing. I walk down the corridor to the nurse's station, and I check in with the overnight charge nurse, and I ask if there is anything she needs help with before I settle in for the night. She says there are 2 charts that could use a second set of eyes if I have the time. I sit down at the station. I open the charts. I put the pen in my hand. The handwriting is precise. Outside, Raymond's voicemail is sitting in Anna Reyes's secure portal. The civil filing is 72 hours away. The laboratory is coordinating with Eleanor's contact. The amendment history on my surgical records is processing at 7 to 12 business days. Everything is moving. I finish the first chart. I start the second. I think about what the scar might actually be from. On the second day, I keep myself occupied the way I have kept myself occupied through the whole of this. I work. I am still on suspension, which means I cannot see patients, but I can read, and I spend 6 hours reading recent literature on aplastic anemia treatment. The outcomes data for pediatric cases from the period when Caleb Voss would have been diagnosed. And somewhere in the 4th hour of reading, I understand something I have been circling without being able to name. I chose this fellowship. I chose it because something in me was drawn to it, something I have never been able to explain. I have wondered about that pull for years, whether it was coincidence or intuition, or some quality of the disease itself that felt personal without my being able to articulate why. It was all of those things. And it was one more thing. I was searching, not consciously, not with a theory or a plan. But the body knows things the mind has not yet assembled into language, and mine knew that somewhere in the pathology of bone marrow failure, there was an answer to a question I had not yet learned to ask. I spent 3 years walking through the door I had been locked out of, and I never knew it was the same door. On the 3rd day, the notification arrives at 11:12 in the morning. I am at Anna's office. In the waiting area with a cup of coffee, reading the brief on the federal referral process, when my phone buzzes. Your results are available. I sit with the notification on the screen for a moment. Then I open the result. The document is 3 pages. I read the methodology and the reference tables and the statistical notation because I read everything completely. The 3rd page is the conclusion. Direct matrilineal relationship confirmed between sample A, identified as Nora Voss, and sample B, identified as Eleanor Hatch. Probability of relationship, 99.9%. Eleanor is my grandmother. I fold the phone in half against my chest. I sit with that for a moment. Then I open Anna's office door. She looks at my face. She holds up one finger. She says to the person on the phone, "I will call you back in 5 minutes." She hangs up. I hand her the phone with the result on the screen. She reads it. She puts the phone down on the desk between us. She looks at me with an expression that is not the expression she uses for case information. This is the expression of a person who has been watching someone carry a very heavy thing for a very long time and has just seen the ground underneath them become solid. She says, "This is it. The forensic voice authentication report, 3 people, 18 years of experience. Known samples. Raymond's voicemails. Unknown sample A, the voice on the Samsung recording. Voice match probability, 91%. The firm's threshold for testimony in federal proceedings is 85%. We are 6 points above it. The recording is dated, the report notes, based on device metadata that survived the battery failure. The metadata date is consistent with the period Eleanor identified in her documentation. 14 months before the school enrollment paperwork was filed under my current name. We have the voice match to Raymond at 91%. The recording dated to the relevant period. The surgical record confirming the donor protocol. Eleanor's 35 years of documentation establishing the missing child case. We are waiting on the DNA, which has now arrived. The patient portal notification arrives on a Tuesday morning at 7:48, while I am eating oatmeal at the counter of the apartment I moved into 9 days ago. The apartment is a studio on the 5th floor of a building 6 blocks from the hospital, part of a rotation program. Anna's housing contact coordinates for residents in transitional situations. I have been here 9 days and I have slept 8 of them, actual sleep, the kind that involves more than 2 consecutive hours. The notification says, "Your records request is complete." I set down the spoon. The document is 43 pages. The first section is the standard patient record: name, date of birth, immunization history, pediatric checkups logged at a facility I do not recognize. Formatted cleanly, the way records are formatted when someone has been careful about what they put in. Then the amendment history begins. The record has been amended multiple times, each logged with a timestamp and a credentialing identifier corresponding to a specific licensed medical professional and a specific institution. I read the most recent amendment. Dated 9 years ago, it reclassifies a procedure performed when I was 7 years old. The procedure, as reclassified: appendectomy, routine, right lower quadrant, standard recovery, no complications noted. I scroll back further. I find the original entry, dated 29 years ago. I was 7 years old. The original procedure classification is diagnostic bone marrow biopsy with harvest attempt, posterior iliac crest. Donor protocol initiated. Harvest outcome, insufficient yield. Patient recovery, standard. I put the phone face down on the counter. I turn it back over. Donor protocol. Insufficient yield. I know these words from 3 years in a hematology fellowship. Insufficient yield means the extraction did not produce enough viable cells for a successful transplant. It means the procedure was attempted and failed. It means that when I was 7 years old, someone put me under general anesthesia and tried to take enough of my bone marrow to save another child, and that it was not enough, and that the other child died, and that no one told me any of this. And that the scar I have been explaining to myself for 12 years is not from an appendectomy, and was never from an appendectomy, and is in the exact correct location for a posterior iliac crest harvest, which is the lower left, which is where it has always been. I scroll to the credentialing identifier on the original entry. It traces to a physician whose license I run through the state medical board database. The physician's name appears. Beside it, in red text, license revoked. Revocation date 19 years ago. Reason, falsification of pediatric medical records. I photograph the screen. I forward everything to Anna's portal. Then I wash the oatmeal bowl and I put on my coat and I go to Anna's office. She is already on it. His involvement corroborates the pattern, she says. A physician willing to falsify records was involved in the procedure on your body. This is not a coincidence. It is a data point that fits the established pattern and strengthens it. She opens a different file. She slides a document across the desk. It is a table, asset transfers on the left, corresponding social media posts on the right. Every transfer has a corresponding post. Rook's signature on each acknowledgement document. Rook's direct message to Whitmore 2 days after my visit to Marcus. Rook knew I was looking, she told Whitmore. She used the language her father gave her, concern for a struggling child, and aimed it at the right person at the right time. Anna closes the file. She says the civil property filing went through yesterday and the asset freeze order was granted this morning. She says 3 more days. The federal courthouse is 4 blocks from Anna's office, and we walk there together on the morning of the arraignment because Anna says she does not use cars for distances she can cover on foot. And because I think, though she does not say this, that she wants me to arrive having breathed outside air rather than having sat in a car working myself into a particular state. It is a cold morning. November now. The kind of cold that is not dramatic about itself, not wind or ice, just the steady fact of a temperature that has decided to stay. I have a scarf I bought at the drugstore 2 weeks ago because I did not have a scarf in the bag I packed, and it is not a good scarf, but it is warm, and warmth is what matters. Anna walks at the pace of someone who has made this walk many times. She carries a leather portfolio and her phone, and she checks the phone once without breaking stride and then puts it in her pocket. She does not fill the walk with conversation, which I appreciate. There is nothing to say that has not already been said in the 40 minutes we spent in her office going through the order of events, the charges, the sequence, the responses I should and should not give if anyone approaches me, which no one will because I am not the defendant, and this morning is not about me speaking. It is about what the evidence says. The courthouse lobby has the specific quality of institutional gravity that federal buildings carry. The particular weight of a place where things are made official, where facts become record in a way that cannot be undone. We go through security. I take off my coat, which still has the Samsung in the right pocket and which I have not left the apartment without in 6 weeks. And I put it in the tray and I watch it go through the machine. The courtroom is smaller than the courtrooms I have seen on television, which is to say it is a real room rather than a performance space. Wooden benches. A gallery that holds perhaps 40 people. Raymond and Pauline come in separately. I see Raymond before he sees me. He is wearing the navy jacket, fine wool. He wore it to my medical school graduation. He stood in the audience in that jacket and shook my hand afterward and said he was not surprised, in the tone he always uses, and I believe that tone was pride. He does not look at me. The charges are read. Kidnapping of a minor. Unauthorized medical procedures on a minor. Conspiracy to commit inheritance fraud. Document fraud. 4 counts. Raymond's attorney enters not guilty pleas on all counts. During the recess, Anna's phone buzzes and she hands it to me. A news alert. The asset freeze went into effect this morning at 9, simultaneously with the arraignment. Brooke began to post about it, and the post was deleted within minutes, but not before her followers saw the notification and began talking. The news coverage started within the hour. There is a clip showing the exterior of the house on Meridian Drive. A still from Brooke's Villa Tour video embedded in a news article. The timestamp visible in the corner, the comments still there. Goals, and I love this for you, and what a life. All of it in amber while the articles around them explain what the assets actually represent. Anna says, do not look at her accounts directly. You are not part of that story today. She says, Osea's civil proceeding starts in 2 hours. We walk back to the courthouse, a different courtroom on the 3rd floor, a civil matter rather than a federal one, but no less real for that. The proceeding is against Gerald Whitmore, the board member who filed the anonymous complaint against my residency. And the basis of the proceeding is the documented interference in my professional standing at the direction of a party with a financial interest in suppressing my investigation. I sit in the gallery. Anna sits beside me. Dr. Osei arrives. She comes in through the main door, not the attorney's entrance, because she is a witness and not a party. She is wearing the coat she wears in winter gray wool, and she carries the binder, the same one I saw referenced in her office the day she placed me on performance review, when she told me she needed to document everything about the situation carefully. It is 3 inches thick, and she carries it the way she carries everything, with the matter-of-fact authority of a person who does not perform the weight of the things she holds. She sits in the witness stand. She opens the binder. She presents it the way a person presents evidence who has been building toward this moment with the full awareness that the moment would come. Every communication Gerald Whitmore sent to the residency program regarding my performance review. Every date, every instruction to apply pressure, every phrasing that characterizes his interference as institutional concern when it is, in fact, a specific action taken at the direction of a party under federal investigation on behalf of a financial interest that is material and documented. It is meticulously organized. It has tabs. Whitmore's attorney cross-examines her. He asks whether she has any evidence that Mr. Whitmore's communications were directed by the Voss family. Dr. Tormium. Osei says that the direct message sent from Brooke Voss's account to Mr. Whitmore's personal account 2 days after Dr. Voss began her records inquiry, instructing him to monitor the situation on behalf of her father, constitutes direction in the ordinary meaning of the word. The attorney says that a social media message does not constitute formal direction. Dr. Torrell. Osei says she is aware of that. She says she was describing the plain meaning of the communication rather than its legal classification, and that the legal classification is the court's business and not hers. The attorney asks whether she ever informed Dr. Voss that she was compiling this record on her behalf. Dr. Osei says no. There is a pause. The attorney asks why not. Dr. Turney asks. Osei sets her hands flat on the binder and she looks at the attorney with the expression she uses when someone in a clinical context has asked a question that has an obvious answer. They apparently require spelled out. She says, because if she had known, her responses to the pressure would have been managed. She would have known she had protection. And the record I was building needed to show what institutional pressure actually does to a person who believes she has none. That required her not to know. She pauses. She says it also required her to be the kind of person who keeps going without knowing. She was that person. The record reflects it. I am in the gallery. I have been looking at the binder. I stop looking at the binder. I look at the back of Dr. Osei's head, the gray wool coat, the binder with its tabs. 14 years at this hospital. 14 years of watching residents come through the program, and apparently, without my knowledge, watching this particular resident with a specific and protective attention that I have experienced for 2 years as adversarial, and that has been for 2 years. Something else entirely. She knew. Not everything, but she knew enough. She read the situation the way a doctor reads a patient who has not yet articulated their symptoms from the pattern of secondary signs. And she understood that the pressure on my residency was coming from somewhere external and that the right response to external pressure in an institutional context is not to resist it visibly, but to document it completely. She let me believe I was alone. She did it on purpose. She did it because she needed the record to be authentic, and the record could only be authentic if I did not know I had anyone in my corner. And I kept going without knowing the way she said I would, the way she apparently believed I would from the beginning. And every morning I walked past her office, and every meeting where she looked at me with that unreadable expression, and every performance review I understood as hostile was in fact a woman doing the hardest version of protecting someone. Which is the version where the person being protected cannot be told. The sentencing courtroom. Same judge, same wooden bench, same federal seal on the wall. They play the recording. The Samsung recording that I accidentally triggered while logging a phone at 2:37 in the morning in a hospital break room where I had been awake for 19 hours and which I put in my coat pocket and carried through 6 weeks of everything that followed. They play it through a speaker connected to the court's audio system, and the quality is better than the cracked phone speaker I listened to it on the first time. Raymond's voice fills the courtroom. The measured register, the careful precision. Candidate, he says. Match. Acquisition. He is sitting 8 feet from the speaker. He does not move. He does not look at the gallery. He does not look at me. I watch the court stenographer's hands while the recording plays. Moving steadily, catching every word, putting it on record, in the record that cannot be undone, in this building, and in the Federal Archive, and in the precedent of this case for as long as records exist. The hands do not slow down or speed up. They move at the pace of the spoken word, and they catch all of it, and they put it down. The judge sentences Raymond Voss to 22 years in a federal correctional facility. The sentence falls into the courtroom the way large things fall into quiet water. Not loudly. With weight. Pauline's sentencing is the following morning. Before the judge announces the sentence, the prosecution plays a portion of the recording, a stretch of background audio where a second person can be heard moving in the room, and where a third voice says something brief and indistinct. The forensic report notes that the third voice, present in the background, is female and consistent in register and cadence with the known vocal samples of Pauline Voss. She was in the room. Pauline receives 14 years. When the sentence is read, she closes her eyes. For a moment, she sits very still with her eyes closed and her hands folded on the table, and she looks like a woman praying. Then she opens her eyes and stands and straightens her jacket. The automatic gesture of a woman who has spent 59 years making sure she looks correct in public. And she turns. She turns toward the gallery. She turns toward me. Her face does the thing it does when it needs something from me. The face she has made my entire life when she needed me to forgive something, or overlook something, or absorb something without registering it as the thing it was. The expression that says, "You are my daughter, and I need you to remember that right now." She reaches out her hand. It is a hand I know. I have been looking at this hand my entire life. I have held this hand at crosswalks when I was small. I received things from this hand and gave things back to this hand, and I know the way it moves. The gesture it is making right now, the one that says, "Come here," that says we are still something to each other. I take one step back, not dramatically, not with anger, which would be a kind of engagement. I simply step back, the distance of a single stride, and Pauline's hand reaches the railing and finds nothing on the other side of it. The officer takes her arm. She is led out through the door to the left of the bench. Her hand closes around the officer's arm instead, and she goes through the door, and the door closes, and the sound of the courtroom resumes. The Voss house on Meridian Drive is a colonial, with a deep front porch and a garden that Pauline kept with the same precision she kept everything visible. The seizure team arrives at 9. 4 of them, plus a court officer and a woman from the federal marshal's office with a clipboard. They move through the house with the practiced efficiency of people who treat the objects in a seized home as data rather than story. I step inside. The hallway is the hallway it has always been. The same runner rug, the same side table with the bowl for keys, the same framed mirror. I have walked in and out of this hallway for the first 18 years of my life and during visits home and medical school, because it felt like the right thing to do, and during visits in residency that I made less frequently for the same reason, and the hallway has always looked like this. And it is both exactly the same and completely different in the way that places are when you understand them at last. I do not feel what I expected to feel. I thought I might feel grief, or relief, or the specific satisfaction of a wrongdoing being corrected. I have been carrying all of these possibilities for weeks. Now I am standing inside the front door, and what I feel is none of them. It is simply a house, objects, rooms, a staircase. The smell of the particular candle Pauline burned in the living room for as long as I can remember, something with cedar in it, still present even though Pauline has not been here in 2 weeks. The cedar smell of a house that was built around a set of lies and which has been, regardless of those lies, a house. 4 walls and a roof and a staircase I learned to climb when I was small. The cataloging team moves through the ground floor. I walk alongside them without speaking. The painting above the fireplace is still there. The landscape with the particular quality of blue in the sky that I have looked at my whole life and associated with the idea of home. The cataloging team notes it on their sheet. It has a value. It is going to auction. I stand in front of it for a moment. The painting is not mine. It has never been mine. It has been in the peripheral vision of a child who was acquiring a self inside a house that was acquiring her for different reasons. And the 2 processes ran alongside each other for 35 years without either one knowing about the other. I turn away and go upstairs. My childhood bedroom is at the end of the hall, past Brooke's old room, past the guest room that was always the guest room that no one ever used, past the bathroom with the tile that has one cracked corner near the base of the wall that I used to look at while I was brushing my teeth. The cracked tile is still there. I notice it because I always notice it. Certain things become landmarks through repetition regardless of their significance. My bedroom door is closed. I open it. The room has been cleared. Some furniture remains. The bed frame, the desk, the bookshelf with the books I left behind when I moved out at 18. But the personal objects that accumulated over 18 years, most of those, are gone. And what remains is the room itself, the specific quality of light from the east-facing window, the way it falls across the floor in the morning, which I have not seen in years, but which I recognize by some register that is below conscious processing. I go to the closet. I pull it open with the extra pressure the lower left corner requires, which my body remembers without my having to think about it. The closet contains Brooke's childhood trophies in a box near the back left. In front of the trophy box is a stack of blankets. Behind the stack of blankets, pushed to the back corner, is a shoebox. The shoebox has a rubber band around it. The rubber band is brittle and comes apart in my hand when I try to slide it off. The shoebox has not been opened recently. I take off the lid. Inside, wrapped in a square of cotton cloth that was once white and is now the color of old linen, is the bracelet. The bracelet is silver. Small, because it was made for an infant. The silver has the particular dull quality of silver that has not been polished in a long time. I turn it over. The engraving is on the inside of the band. It says, Clara. I hold the bracelet in my palm. They kept it. For 35 years, in a shoebox at the back of a closet in the bedroom that belonged to the child they took it from, they kept it. Raymond kept it. Raymond, who destroys things that are inconvenient, who amends records and removes evidence and converts truths into administrative facts, kept this one small thing. He kept it because it was a record, not because he felt anything about it, because it documented a transaction. Because somewhere in the part of him that converts everything into data, he understood that this small silver object was the original evidence of the original event, and that a man who destroys the original evidence of his own crimes loses access to the record of what he did, and Raymond has always needed the record, even the records that damn him. Because the records are how he knows he exists. I put the bracelet in my coat pocket. I take nothing else from the house. I drive to Anna's office. She is back from her hearing. She is at her desk, and she looks up when I come in, and she sees my face, and she says, "Come in." She makes tea herself in the small kitchen off the waiting room. She brings it to the conference room, and she sets it down without asking what I take in it, because she has noticed in 6 weeks what I take in it. She sits across from me, and she wraps her hands around her own cup. She says, Brooke's trial is scheduled for 6 weeks from now. The evidence against Brooke, the signed acknowledgement documents, the direct message to Whitmore, the financial disclosure timeline from the social media posts, is strong, and the prosecution's outlook is favorable. The board member, Whitmore, has entered into a cooperation agreement with the federal investigation in exchange for a reduced civil penalty, which means he will testify, which strengthens the case against Brooke further. I ask about the assets. She says the seized estate will be liquidated. After legal costs, the remainder will be determined by the court. She says I have options and she is ready to discuss them whenever I want to. I say I already know what I want to do with them. She looks at me. I tell her I want the estate proceeds, after legal costs and court allocations, donated to Halverson General's Fund for unaccompanied pediatric patients. The patients who come through the hospital with no one in the waiting room. The ones who go through procedures without a family member in the chair. I want the donation made in no particular name. Not mine, not the family's, not any name. Anonymous. Clean. She writes this down. She does not editorialize. She says the process will take several months once the assets are fully liquidated, but she can structure the instruction into the estate settlement now, so it is documented and binding. I say I would like that. She says, and the property itself? I say the same. Her seeds to the fund. She writes it down. I ask about one other thing. I tell her I want to add a middle name to my legal documentation. I tell her the name. She writes it down. She looks at what she has written. She looks at me. She says she will have the name change petition filed with the records request by the end of the week. I say thank you. She stands and I stand, and she shakes my hand across the desk the way she did the first day I came in once firmly. And she holds it a beat longer than she did that first time, and then she releases it. Outside the conference room window, the city keeps going, and the November light is the low, clear light of a month that does not pretend to be warmer than it is. And I think about a hospital break room at 2:37 in the morning, and a cracked screen lighting up in my hand. That is where this began. The paperwork takes a Tuesday. I go to Anna's office, and I sign the donation instruction and the estate settlement filing and the name change petition. I sign each one with my handwriting, which is precise, which is what it has always been, and I put the pen down after each one, and I wait for the next document to be placed in front of me. At the bottom is a line for the requested legal name. It reads, Nora Clara Voss, not a replacement. The name I have lived inside for 36 years is not being erased. It is simply being given a companion the way a record is given context. the way a patient file has a history attached to it that makes the current entries legible. Nora is who I am. Clara is where I began. Together they say both things at once, which is the only accurate version of what I am. I sign it. My residency has been reinstated. The suspension was formally lifted following the submission of the federal charges against the board member who filed the anonymous complaint, following Dr. Osei's civil testimony, following the documentation that made the interference undeniable. I go through the side entrance. I take the stairs to the third floor. I walk down the corridor past the break room and past the residence lounge and past the chart printer, and I walk past all of it toward the records department. I go through the double doors. Marcus is at his desk. The succulents are arranged differently again. Two of the small ones have moved. He is looking at his screen and he does not look up immediately, and I stand at the glass partition for a moment. The same partition I stood at 6 weeks ago and asked a question I could not ask directly. And I take a piece of paper from the notepad on the counter and the pen from the cup beside it, and I write 2 words on the paper. I fold it. I slide it under the glass. He picks it up. He looks at it. His face does not do anything demonstrative. He holds the folded paper for a moment, and then he puts it on his desk beside the smallest succulent, the one with the new growth at its base, the pup which has grown noticeably in 6 weeks, which is what things do when they are given time and the right conditions. He does not look up. I go back out through the double doors. The door is open. She looks up and says, "Back on Thursday?" I say yes. She nods. She says good. She picks up the file she was reading. I stand in the doorway. I say, "I know what you did." She looks up. She does not say anything. I say I understand why you did it the way you did it. She holds the file. She looks at me with an expression I have not seen on her face in 2 years of residency. Not the adversarial precision, not the managed distance, something older than that and simpler. She says, "I know what good looks like when I see it." She goes back to the file. 3 weeks after the sentencing, Eleanor and I meet in the garden outside the cardiac ward. It is the garden I have walked past dozens of times without stopping. A small enclosed space with benches and a bare rose trellis and 2 trees whose leaves are gone now, November having taken them. But the space still has the quality of a deliberate garden. Someone planted these things here on purpose, and the purpose is still visible even without the leaves. Eleanor is on the bench nearest the door. She has the folder on her lap. She has the photograph. She says, "I brought you something." She opens the folder to a section I have not seen. She takes it out and she hands it to me. It is a photograph. Not the one I already have. Not the yellow dress and the living room floor. This is a different photograph, taken when I was perhaps 3 months old. I am wrapped in a blanket, and I am being held by a woman who is 40 years younger in this photograph than she is on the bench beside me. Eleanor is holding me. Her body is turned slightly inward, the way people hold infants, the automatic protective curve of an arm around something small and wanted, and her expression is the expression of a person who does not know they are being photographed, which means the expression is simply what was on her face in that moment without being arranged for anyone. It is the expression of someone who loves what they are holding. I look at the photograph for a long time. Eleanor does not say anything. She has the quality she has always had of knowing when to be quiet, and she sits beside me on the bench in the November garden and she lets me look. I take the bracelet out of my coat pocket. I hold it for a moment, the silver warm from the pocket, the engraving I know by touch now. I put the bracelet on. It does not fit over my hand the way it would have fit at 14 months, but the clasp is the kind that can be extended. A small mechanism at the back that jewelers add to heirloom pieces to allow them to be worn by people who have grown. And Eleanor told me her mother had this done decades ago for exactly this reason, for the day when Clara would be old enough to wear the bracelet that was always meant for her. I work the clasp to the extended position. I close it around my wrist. It fits. Eleanor looks at the bracelet on my wrist. Then she looks at the rose trellis, and she does not cry, not the way she cried in the hospital room. This is the face of a person who has arrived somewhere they were not sure they would arrive at, and who is simply, in this moment, here. I say, "Tell me her name." Eleanor looks at me. She says, Your mother's name was Diane. She was 24 years old. She was a nurse, which is something I have not known until this moment, and which lands in a particular way. A nurse who had a daughter who became a doctor. A chain of vocation running through a family that was interrupted and has now resumed its thread. She says Diane died 11 years ago. She told her before she died that she had never stopped believing Clara was alive somewhere. She says, "She would have liked you." I fold the photograph carefully and I put it in my coat pocket. Eleanor puts her hand over mine on the bench, not claiming anything, not asking anything, just a hand on a hand, the oldest and simplest gesture, the one that says, "I am here and I see you, and you do not have to explain yourself to me." We sit in the garden until the cold makes sitting unreasonable. When we stand, she takes my arm and we walk back through the door into the hospital lobby and we go to the elevator. And on the way, we pass the records department on the second floor. Through the window, I can see Marcus at his workstation with the succulents along the back edge of his desk. I do not stop, but the folded note is still on his desk, beside the smallest succulent, the one with the pup at its base that has been growing for 6 weeks in the right conditions. I put Eleanor in a taxi at the front entrance. She says she will call tomorrow. I say I know. I watch the taxi until it turns the corner. Then I go inside. I take the stairs. 4 flights. Not for the exercise. For the particular quality of moving through space that has no other purpose, no destination on each landing, just the next flight. At the top, I push through the door onto my floor. The nurse's station is lit, the fluorescent hum. A colleague at the far end of the corridor nodding at something on his phone, the printer making its sound. The monitors. The particular alive and working quality of a hospital floor at 9 in the evening that I have been coming back to for 2 years through everything. Through suspensions and storage units and parking garages and concrete stairwell steps and one very long night. And which is the one place in my life that has been consistently mine in the way that work is yours, when you are good at it and you know it and you have stopped needing anyone else to confirm it. I sit down at the station. There is a lost and found box on the counter, a new one, white, with the hospital's intake tag on the front. Someone must have dropped it off during the shift handoff. I look at it for a moment. The intake tag is blank. I put my hand on it. Then I take my hand off it. Not tonight. I pull the first chart toward me. I pick up the pen. I open the chart and I find the place where I left off and I begin to write the handwriting precise, the way it has always been, the way it will keep being. Not because I was taught to be precise or praised into it, but because precision is what I have when I arrive somewhere new and need to understand it. It is how I have always moved through the world. Observation first, then the record, then the knowledge that the record is true. The bracelet is on my wrist. The note from Dr. Osei is in my pocket. The photograph of my mother is in my pocket. I am precisely the same person I was at 2:37 in the morning, standing at this station with a cracked phone in my hand and a fluorescent hum above me and no idea what was about to begin. And I am nothing like her.